Hey everybody, ronarray here, and today I want to showcase a pretty unusual build, which is surprisingly one of the best in the current Diablo 4 meta. Lightning Fury evades SpiritBorn. Overall, stuff that's happening on the screen can speak for itself, but this build is extremely fast and can stomp every content in the game without any issues while being almost invincible because of the different interactions. Build can easily stomp Tormented 4 content such as Uber Lilith or any other Uber boss, farm high tier pits and clear all content in the game while being lightning fast. I've started working on it exactly after while leveling I noticed the crazy damage from Eagle Spirit plus evade combo, and now I'm happy enough with the results to showcase a completed build. And yes, it is better than Quill Volley, mostly because of better speed and easier rotations. Let's go forward and I will explain how it works and what you will need to go lightning fast, and will also showcase some gameplay. So how the build works. The most important part is Spirit Hole bonus Eagle. Eagle is going to give us, when you evade, flying up to 8 storm feathers for every remaining second of movement speed buff, each dealing damage. That buff is going to deal the most of our damage in that build. And to improve it even further, we are going to pick a second Eagle buff, which is going to give us a little critical strike chance. But it's not so important. The real important part here is that we can use Loyalty Mantle Helmet, which is going to give us, while your Spirit Hole choices match, their bonuses are 100% more potent, and it's going to literally double our damage, which is absolutely insane. It's also going to give us additional movement speed, which is very good for the playstyle, and a lot of damage reduction. But the most important thing after it is how we can make our evade to go out of the cooldown so we can spam it. For that, we are going to use Sapazon tag Unique Water Stuff. It's going to give us your basic skill deal, 50% increased damage, and always use their third attack. Every third cast of basic skill strikes 3 times. So generally we are going to spam Thunder Spikes, and Thunder Spikes have a cool unique bonus such as Accelerated Thunder Spike. So Thunder Spike bonus is going to use our third attack, and such Thunder Spike goes with like your third attack pierces further, dealing additional damage and reducing your evade cooldown by 5 seconds. So every time when we are going to evade, we are going to trigger Thunder Spike with Accelerated Thunder Spike, and we are going to reduce cooldown of the evade for 5 seconds, which is going to lead us to the situation when we can literally spam evade non-stop, which is absolutely amazing because it's going to buff a lot of bonuses for the build, and we will be able to have better defenses, crazy amount of speed, and a lot of damage with it. For it to work, we also will need 1 point into acceleration. It will give us casting Eagle skill grade movement speed for 4 seconds and 1 additional bonus for evade. That's a very important part because 1 additional evade is important, so we can always spam it. We need at least 2 charges, so keep that in mind. We will also be able to use different techniques to pretty much improve our lightning damage, such as Storm Feather's potency bonuses as tempering on our rings, for example. We can also use cool glyphs such as Jagged Plume for reaching even more Storm Feather's potency, because it's going to increase our damage significantly. And we can also use different bonuses to increase our lightning damage, such as Canny for non-physical bonus or Fulminate for lightning damage bonus by itself. That way we can build a pretty balanced board when we just buff the damage in the different instances, and we make enemies vulnerable with every hit, so we can stack vulnerable damage. We can also get it on the Glyphs, for example. And as a cherry on top, we can also utilize the Brilliance for a huge bonus damage. So what about our defenses? For the defenses measures, we will have Armored Height, and we will be able to receive up to 2 resolve every 5 seconds. And resolve is going to give us 20% of damage reduction, and it can also make us unstoppable and give us 100% block chance, which is very good. On top of that, we will also be able to use a counterattack. So counterattack will give us additional dodge chance, and will give us additional chance to dodge all direct attacks when it's active. Together with counter-attack enhancement, we will also be able to lower its cooldown, so it's working pretty nice by itself. We also will be able to get the barrier from auspicious passive, which working pretty nice as well, and get additional dodge with mirage, because it will be able to give us a lot of dodge chance every time when we are evading, so during evade itself. That way we can have a significant amount of dodge chance and just dodge most of the attacks that enemies are pretty much spamming just with counter-attack or with mirage and our basic dodge chance that we are receiving from dexterity. On top of that, we will also be able to use Earthen Bulwark with runes to get a constant barrier and pretty much protecting ourselves. And if possible, we can use a Tempering to get maximum resolve stacks to pretty much raise our survivability. So Guerrilla's and Jaguar's skill is pretty much very important for our build, because we are going to use Guerrilla for aspect of unyielding hits, which will give us casting a Guerrilla skill increase your weapon damage by 30% of your armor. That's very important. That way we will use all the Guerrilla skills on the panel, such as Armored Hide, which we need to spam just when it's out of cooldown immediately, and pretty much the Protector. The ultimate, which we are going to use to pretty much get unstoppable, as I already mentioned. So all three Guerrilla skills should be used constantly to make sure that we always have unyielding hits aspect up. And just the Jaguar skill, we pretty much need them for potent passive. And for potent passive, we're going to proc them with a Ravager buff. So we need to just use a Ravager every time when we are encountering any tough enemy. And Ravager is going to hit our enemy and pretty much stack potent buff on that enemy. That way we'll be able to deal more damage and it will feel significantly better. So what is our rotation? Generally, we just need to evade until we hit the enemy. At that moment we can use the Vortex to pretty much pull enemies together, and that's just like a controlling ability. After that we can literally use Ravager together with Armor Hide and Counterattack. Generally, while you are in the fight, you will need to spam Counterattack and Armor Hide just non-stop. The buffs from Armored Hide and Counterattack are very important, so try to keep both of those skills always up. Vortex is here just for the engage and when you need to move enemies together. So in most of other situations you don't really need to use that. And Protector is here just to provide unstoppable, so I'm mostly using it on bosses or if I can see a lot of elites which can pretty much stun me. Otherwise, you will be fine just by using Armored Hide and Counterattack. You can also spam most of your abilities while you are evading, so you don't really need to stop for it. Keep running and just spam abilities at the same time. For that, I'm moving my way to the right mouse click and it helps a lot. So, to try that build, the mandatory part that you will need is just Sapazon Quarterstaff. But I definitely recommend to have Loyalty Mantle as well, because without it, it can feel not that strong. So if you have those two uniques, you're pretty much ready to go. The rest is not that important and you will feel just fine. So talking about our uniques, for Loyalty Mantle, we generally need just damage reduction. So as you can see, I have a movement speed here, but damage reduction would be significantly better. Percentages of the skill itself doesn't matter, so you can go with any, because vigor cost reduction or cooldown reduction is not really that important. So, moving forward for Sapazon tag, I still recommend to get basic skill damage for a little higher. If you can get closer to 100, it will be better, even if it's not that important. You just need to get dexterity, and when you are masterworking it, try to get dexterity as well, because dexterity is the most important stat on that item. As you can see here, I've been a little unlucky and I will probably need to re-masterwork it later. Talking about the aspects, I think one of the most important aspects is aspect of Conceited. That way we will be able to deal more damage while we have a barrier, and we constantly have barrier. So moving forward, the next aspect that we are going to use is aspect of Redirected Force. That way you'll be able to deal like increased critical strike damage based on our block chance. It's working pretty nice and our block chance is pretty high too. And we're also blocking from time to time, but since we're evading more often, I think it's less important than the barrier aspect. So moving to the second ring, I think aspect of unyielding hits work pretty great as well, because we're using guerrilla skills pretty often, and at higher levels, when we will be able to finish masterwork or all of our items, we will have at least 4k armor. I have only 2k right now, but most of my items are not really masterworked. So I definitely recommend it. Talking about the last offensive item, it's pretty much aspect of the elements, because that way we can get lightning damage bonus and it still feels pretty good. For defense, I definitely recommend to get interdirection, because that way you will be able to get block chance based on resolve. That way you will survive better, you will block more often, and also you will get more damage from your aspect of redirected force. On the pants, I'm generally taking aspect of layered wards. It gives us a damage reduction while we have a barrier, and as we already discussed, we always have a barrier. So at the boots, I just recommend to go with aspects of concussive strikes, because we are hitting many times, so we will be able to daze more enemies from time to time and crowd control bosses too. That way we will deal more damage to them, and it's working pretty nice. So talking about runes, that's pretty important. The most important rune for us is pretty much a combination of Sam and Q. That way we can, every time when we are casting evade, we are going to get points, and when we are reaching 300, we are going to cast Earthen Bulwark. That's an absolutely amazing abilities, and we will get like huge amount of barrier. It also will get us additional duration, and as you probably seen in my gameplay, we always have Bulwark on us. So here in the helmet, I just use Seer and Gar. That way every time when we cast the same non-channeling skill 3 times in a row, so for example 3 evades, not count itself, but since every evade is casting Thunder Spike, 3 Thunder Spike can count. That way 3 evades with Thunder Spikes are pretty much going to give us a bonus. We are receiving additional critical strike chance with stacks up to 25%. That helps a lot to reach 100% of critical strike chance, and I definitely recommend to run it. Talking about the gems, we just need dexterity gems here, and for the jewelry, I'm usually using like armor skulls, because I think that's the best option at the moment. So talking about the tempering, at most of our jewelry we need Storm Feather's potency, because it's going to increase our damage significantly. And on the item itself, like dexterity, maximum life and total armor is working just fine. Maximum life could be repicked, so it's not that mandatory, and we can go with Brilliance, for example, instead. So Storm Feather's potency is a temper on every item. On the rings, I recommend to go with dexterity, life and critical strike chance, so both my rings are kinda the same. And Incarnate cooldown reduction or counterattack charges could be a second option for rings. At the amulet, maximum resolve is probably the best stat, so if you can roll it, pretty much go for it. Talking about gloves, here we can get Stormfeather's potency again, and chance to freeze enemies or chance to stun enemies. Any kind of crowd control would work just fine. For the item itself, it's mostly dexterity, critical strike chance, and you can get maximum life or armor. So to get resistances up, we need to roll resistances on our body armor, on our pants, and on our boots too. I currently don't have resistances on the boots, and it's not really feeling that great. So generally here, instead of life or dexterity, you can pretty much just go for resistances. I also recommend to pick at least one armor. So for example, the chest armor, you can go with dexterity, armor, and resistances. And it goes the same at pants, you can go for life, dexterity, resistances on armor. For a perfect setup, you can check my builder link in the description. I'm pretty much showcasing just perfect setup here. And talking about masterworks and tempering, I recommend to go with tempering movement speed here together with vortex size, so it will feel a little better. Maximum resolve and sizes for the rest, like Thunder Spike to hit more often, working just fine. And at the armor, I recommend to go with barrier generation, like armor or health. Both of those options are working just fine. So talking about our skills. The most important part is Thunder Spike. I still level it to level 5 because even if it's not dealing a lot of damage, it's a little bit better. And Accelerated Thunder Spike is mandatory, as I already mentioned. Moving forward, I'm taking Vortex together with Enhanced Vortex and Measured Vortex. Pretty much to use it for crowd control because we always have Barrier. As a passives, we are taking Follow Through because that's a basic passive and it's going to improve the damage of our basic skill. After that, we're also taking Unrestrained Power because that way we will be able to deal more damage while we are unstoppable, and while we are standing in our ultimate, we're always unstoppable, which is pretty great. Mirage is mandatory as well because it's going to give you 60% chance to dodge attacks. Together with your dexterity, you're going to reach 80% of dodge attacks while you are in the evade, and it's working very good. So moving forward, Focal Point is pretty important too because we are going to get block damage here and we have a lot of block. Apex gives Vulnerable and Diminished, pretty much making us a little more tanky. For Ravager, I'm just picking Ravager and Enhanced Ravager. However, the Ravager itself is pretty important because it's going to give us more damage, and not just more damage, it's also going to proc bonuses from Jaguar skills. Moving forward, Perseverance is just amazing, it's probably the most important part here for survivability. I'm taking 5 points in the Armored Height to pretty much rise duration, as you can see, and get more passive resolve. As a passive, I'm taking Reinforced Armored Height, and that way we can get a little more block damage reduction. As a counter attack, I'm taking all the passive and Reinforced counter attack because that way we will be able to have more critical strike damage against enemies which are close to us, so try to stay closer to your enemies. And Auspicious is a very great way to get some barrier, especially outside of the fight. I'm not sure if 3 points here is mandatory, so you can lower it like to 2 or to 1, but generally I still prefer it. Moving forward, Brilliance is very important, because we are going to deal most of the damage based on our movement speed, and our movement speed is pretty high already. So try to invest as many points here as possible. Resilient here is pretty nice, we are constantly casting guerrilla skills anyway. And Potent here is pretty important too, because it's going to increase our damage significantly. And to proc Potent, we are pretty much going to use the Ravager, so those two are kinda connected. And moving forward as an ultimate, I'm using Protector, mostly because it's providing us with Unstoppable, which is absolutely insane together with Exalted Protector. It's here for like 12 seconds, and it's working pretty good. The rest is not that important, we're just taking Resolution for additional damage, Supremacy for even more damage, and I prefer to take 1 point into Initiative, so we will be able to literally cast an ultimate and become unstoppable just immediately. And the main passive is Vital Strikes. So Vital Strike is here just to get additional bonus damage against vulnerable enemies. The rest is not important, but feeling pretty good. So, talking about the Paragon. My Paragon right now is not really completed. At the moment when I filmed the video, it's been like 218. So, to find the perfect Paragon, you can check the link in the description again. But currently we are using glyphs such as Canny, Jagged Plume, Fulminate, Spirit, and Talon. So the first board is pretty much just Jagged Plume, we can take all the dexterity around, and the most important nodes. The next board is Convergence, because that's absolutely amazing and it's going to give us additional damage. And the glyph here is Spirit, so we're just receiving more damage here. I'm also passing to the left to take more life, and non-physical damage together with even more life. So the next board here is Drive. Drive is working pretty good because we are constantly moving around. And the glyph here is Canny, because Canny is very nice for lightning damage. I'm also passing to the right to get like movement speed, critical strike chance, together with life again, because life is very cool in the current state of Diablo. So the next board here is Sapping, and Sapping working pretty nice because we are constantly casting Eagle skills. So the glyph here is Fulminate for more lightning damage, and it's kind of self-explanatory. However, keep in mind that to stack damage from Fulminate, you need to get Intelligence instead of Dexterity. so only 25 dexterity required, and the rest should be intelligence, because intelligence is going to give us more lightning damage. And the last board is Vicious Shield. Vicious Shield is absolutely amazing, and you can try to reach it as fast as possible. So instead of going to some additional parts, taking such things like Elementalist or Training, I recommend you pass to the Vicious Shield board as fast as possible, because since you constantly have Barrier, it will give you crazy amount of damage. So the glyph here is Talon, because Eagle skills, that's pretty much what we are currently using. That way we also will be able to give like more critical strike damage, and it will work just fine too. Taking bonuses for Barrier here and critical strike damage here is recommended as well. So that's pretty much it at the moment, and if you want to see a finished version of the Paragon, please check out the link in the description. So that's been my Lightning Evade SpiritBorn build, and I'm pretty happy how it turned out. I will try to work on it in the next few days, so check out my Twitch stream in the description if you're interested in something like that, and you will be able to check my progression there. I will also try to push like higher speed for it, and we will see how it will progress. If there will be huge changes in items, I will definitely try to do another video about it, so stay tuned. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time. ronarray out.